What's going on, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that all of you are enjoying your holiday. Dennis McKinley said that he wanted to see Maurice Scott in the ring after the interview that Maurice did with Carlos King. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Dennis McKinley, he is an entrepreneur and a businessman, and he was linked with Porsha Williams from the Real Housewives of Atlanta. They share a daughter together, and Dennis has additional children as well. And Maurice Scott, as you guys may or may not be familiar with, but he's one of the cast members on Love and Marriage Huntsville, and he's married to Kimmie Scott. So he did an interview with Carlos King, who's the creator and executive producer of Love and Marriage Huntsville on the OWN network. And the things that he said were so disturbing and so chauvinistic and misogynistic that Dennis, had to step up and defend Kimmie's honor. So just to paraphrase what the interview was about, Carlos King was interviewing Maurice about traditional male values and how, they're both from Michigan. And Carlos was saying that, he grew up in a two-parent household where his father, was the main breadwinner and his mom stayed home. And Carlos King, who was attracted to men, and he just said that, he wanted to learn how straight men think, right? Their thought process. And he listens to different podcasts. And it reminds me a bit of, the framework of Kevin Samuels before he died, because the men that Carlos King has cast on his shows, albeit, Love and Marriage Huntsville, DC, now Detroit, they all seem to have this pattern of behavior of gaslighting their wives, of chauvinism, of, dismissing their wives' feelings and thoughts. And they almost seem to have this lack of self-awareness, right? Like, I don't know if they're even aware of just how chauvinistic and misogynistic they appear on camera. And the reason why I say this is because I feel like, that framework of relationship that they have, in their minds in regards to being so dismissive of their wives' feelings. I don't know if it was normalized when they grew up, or if they think that that's how relationships are supposed to be. But it's really nice to see other men step in and say, no, that's not right. That's not cool. And Dennis, he said that he wanted to see Maurice in the ring. He's like, give me 20K and we can settle this in the ring, because he said that the interview that Maurice did with Carlos King was quote unquote disgusting. And it was. I agree with Dennis McKinley 100%, 10 toes down. Okay. Basically, Maurice, and to paraphrase him, he said that he needs intimacy, physical intimacy with his wife, who is battling cancer, right? Kimmie is fighting for her life. She's battling breast cancer. And, she's finished rounds of chemo. Her hair has fallen out. And she's a nurse, right? So she knows, all the protocols and procedures. And, naturally, her libido is dropped, right? If you have radiation and you're undergoing chemotherapy, I can't even imagine what that must do and how it must ravage the body. But, Maurice was saying that physical intimacy is a need for him. And he compared it to, Carlos King. He's like, I need intimacy physically the way you need mess. And Carlos King thought that was so funny. He fell off his chair, was clapping, and, it's just like they were making a joke about the whole thing. Maurice said that, Kimmie will just roll over and suffer through it, end quote. And um my reaction was similar to Dennis, right? It was one of disgust, because if you truly love someone, you do not want them to suffer through anything, especially anything coming from you, right? Like, that's your wife. That's somebody who you took a vow before your family, your friends, and God to stand before this person through, sickness and in health. And that doesn't mean that you disregard her feelings, both physically and emotionally, to satisfy your carnal pleasures. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he's so, and on top of that, if you guys are familiar with the show at all, he wants her to basically raise his son, like his son, Maurice Jr., and he has a nickname Monster, which is problematic in and of itself. And I've talked about it in previous videos, but he wants his son to, pretty much get up at 5 a.m., for boot camp. And he wants him to follow in his footsteps as an entrepreneur. And Maurice is a lawyer, okay? So the fact that he's taken all these legal courses on logic and, critical thinking, for him to say those things it's mind-blowing, right? And it's not like, he can't abstain. He also says within the same interview as Carlos King that he had abstained from, any kind of physical act with, in physical intimacy with another person for 6 months, because he had a health scare himself. And he said that he wanted to be, just more disciplined over, that particular activity. So when it comes to himself and his health, right? That's the key. That's the caveat. I don't know if Kimmie has picked up on how selfish, I mean, unbelievably selfish her husband is. And I feel like she has, because we can see the facial expressions, or when she asks him a direct question and he does everything but answer, he deflects, he gaslights, he focuses on her tone. You know what I mean? Like, he tone polices her. But he was able to abstain for himself for 6 full months. But you mean to tell me that you can't wait until, Kimmie is feeling better after radiation and chemotherapy? That level of selfishness is disgusting. Like Dennis said, that was the perfect adjective. And, I'm glad that another man, Carlos King, who's ultimately their boss, failed to, advocate for Kimmie or for the other women of the show who are in extremely stressful situations, like Martell and Mel. And Carlos King will not advocate for the women on the show, but I'm glad to see that Dennis McKinley is. And then, of course, Maurice, he claps back with, well, you left a trail of, baby mothers. And, but Maurice, if you marry someone, but yet you don't show up to support them, you don't raise your son, because, Maurice Jr. is in his room by himself all the time. That's what he said on the show. So what exactly are you doing besides being selfish? But anyway, those are just my opinions. Everything on this video is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. But if they did, have a boxing match, I would definitely be tuned in, and y'all know I'll give you an update. So with that being said, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video. It's a free way to support the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk with you later. Take care, Aces. Bye.